Hey, welcome back for another episode of Porn Brain Rewire, the podcast with me, Dr. Trish Leigh. I'm really glad to have you here. We are moving into Thanksgiving week in the United States. So I really have been reflecting on the madness of the past year, which I will share with you some of the madness of my life for the past year. And I've been reflecting on guilt, grief, and gratitude. So we know from neuroscience, gratitude can be so powerful to keep you moving forward in that journey of self-actualization, self-healing, and evolution, really, is the way that I think about it. Guilt and grief threaten you moment by moment, second by second, to take you back and to take you down. And that's what I'm here to avoid. I do not want you going backwards in this awesome and important journey. I want you to stay the course with me. I'm on this journey too. Stay with me on this journey and move forward in peace and feeling calm and focused as often as possible to be able to move towards the authentic, best, kick-ass version of yourself. So in this episode, we're going to discuss guilt and how guilt is different from shame, and that shame can take us down. If we can convert it into guilt, we can make guilt move us forward towards gratitude and help us in the journey. That's number one today. Number two is grief. I have the notion of ambiguous grief on my mind. I've actually been wanting to make a podcast on ambiguous grief for a long time. When there's someone who is missing from your life, even though they're still alive, and they call it, or portions, it can be included in the notion of ambiguous grief. Doesn't feel that ambiguous to me, if you know what I mean. But we are going to talk about grief, especially ambiguous grief and loss, and how to use those ideas to move you towards gratitude. And then we're going to anchor into gratitude and try to get you into a space of gratitude, even though you might be feeling guilt and grief. We're going to convert it into gratitude and try to stay in that space as often as possible. It's not ignoring your feelings. It's actually honoring your true feelings, but being able to move you through them, not sitting in them all the time, move you through them so you can get to a place of peace and gratitude. Okay, so without further ado, we will dive into that. I just wanted to share with you that today's episode is sponsored by the nonprofit organization that I have founded. It is called Porn Brain Prevention. You can go to pornbrainprevention.org and donate. For this week and all through next week, which is Giving Tuesday, we are asking people to donate, which is not a thing I typically do. But I would love for you to donate and support that cause because we are on the brink of really important work. And if you donate money during this week, I personally will match it. So I'm hoping to dig into my pocket and pull out as much cash as possible so that I can donate even more to this worthy cause. I donate to it myself all the time. What we're on the brink of is being able to hire a full-time administrator to raise more money so that we can really put these programs into place. At the same time, I'm already collaborating with an organization who's going to record and then publish and help me get out into the world video recordings designed for teenagers and for leaders in youth organizations, church organizations, and doctors who don't know the dangers of pornography. And the goal of that organization is to go upstream and to save young people from the plight of porn addiction recovery, because if you're in it, you know it's a plight. So please donate, and I'll match your donation, and I'll let you know how much that is after Giving Tuesday. So let's do it. Okay, please go to pornbrainprevention.org and donate if it feels good to you. Dig deep so I can match your donation. Okay, moving on is that let's start to talk about guilt. Guilt is a tricky one, and I have pangs of guilt, unfortunately, still. So let me frame what I was starting to say in the madness of this last year. If you haven't heard me during the weak moments, the ones where I cried on this podcast, I have been suffering is the right word, but I'm on my way out of the woods. I had been getting poisoned for almost a decade, probably at least 5 years, mycotoxin poisoning. For the last 2 years, I have actively been trying to recover from mycotoxin poisoning, and I'm hoping that I've made enough momentum that I'm out of the woods now. We had to move out of our home, which was the source of the toxins, unbeknownst to us. It was a very toxic environment in terms of the air. We had to move out of our home. We had to move, and remember, I have 5 children, 6 including my bonus son. We had to move 2.5 times last year between this last Thanksgiving and this Thanksgiving. And we actually had to end up buying a whole nother house because that's the only one that we could find that when we tested it, it didn't have these toxins. And at one point, I was diagnosed with cancer. Thankfully, I have used all the strategies that I proclaim here to you to get myself into a place where I could recover from those physical toxins in just the same way that I'm encouraging you and supporting you to recover from mental toxins. So it's been a doozy of a year. I had to move into my friend's house for over a month. If you watch the videos on YouTube of this podcast, I've never stopped making them. You can see that not only do I look awful, I am in different places all the time because I kept having to move. It was literally a cruel joke for a very sick person and a big family. We had to get rid of every single piece of our belongings, everything. And then we've had to subsequently redo our entire house, which is amazing now, and get all new belongings. Totally crazy year. But throughout all the madness, my husband has stayed by my side. Don't get me wrong, he didn't believe me at first. And this is where I want to go with guilt. We're going to move into guilt. He did not believe me. I said, dude, this house is killing me. I am not quite sure how, but this house is killing me. I know it. And he did not believe me. So I had to dig deep down into my heart and have the courage to move out. I moved out by myself, kind of going against what my husband wanted, which is not necessarily a thing I do often. We're a team. We make decisions together for the most part, and we are on the same page. There will be times in your relationship you are not on the same page. And there has been times in the past where I had to stay the course to help that man get back on the same page with me. And this is actually another example of it, but in a different way. So I had to dig deep down, and I was feeling very guilty about it, but I knew I had an issue. And I knew I had to do what was right for me to be able to get well. But that meant I had to change the way that my life looked. And I literally had to move out away from my family. So I slept on the back porch not this past summer, the summer before. It was like 90 degrees overnight, but I couldn't go back in the house. I spent like 2 months trying to stay at beach houses and mountain houses and piece together other places to stay because I just knew something in it was making me sick. Now, hopefully, this is resonating with the screen and consuming pornography and masturbation for you, because I know from the journey with a lot of men, they don't know that porn is the source of all the issues that they are struggling with. We know that porn damages your brain. It causes anxiety. It causes depression in your life. It causes erectile dysfunction, sexual arousal dysfunction. It makes you less attracted to your partner. There becomes disconnect in your relationship. We know there's a 50% higher chance that there's divorce or an ugly breakup. That's what the research shows when there's porn in the mix. So that's why I think this journey of mycotoxin poisoning for me is very much the same as a porn recovery journey for you, because you're being exposed to it and not necessarily knowing that that exposure to that toxin is giving you your symptoms. But at a certain point, and now you might feel shame. Shame is I am a bad person. Guilt is I'm in the middle of something that doesn't feel good to me and it's not a thing that I want. So clearly, when I'm moving out away from my family and I have to tell my husband, sorry, dude, I'm out the door. I have to stay alive. And actually, it was a very empowering moment for me personally in the midst of all of this challenge. But for our relationship, it didn't feel good. But I had to say, you know what, my man, I got to go into the woods and figure this out, and I'll come back and join you in this relationship. I'm never leaving. I'm committed to you, but I'm more committed to myself right now. And that can give you feelings of guilt, even though you need to go and stay on your side of the street to recover, because without you, there is no us. And getting yourself healthy and back into tip-top shape, peak performance, so that you can show up as the best version in your relationship, then you have to be able to push that guilt away. At the same time, there might be other things that you've done in the past or that other people have done to you in the past. So it's guilt for what you're feeling about your own actions, or you might hold judgment against other people to keep them in guilt. So when we talk about guilt right now, I want to break it down into three very explicit pieces. There's guilt of having to make decisions for yourself in a new way that you might not have experienced before. That's kind of present guilt. You might feel guilt in the present about what you're still doing in terms of your porn habit and masturbation, or in terms of the conflict that you feel on the inside, because you now know this toxin is impacting you, but you also are realizing it's not as easy to step away as you thought it was. Just like that literally physically was for me a year ago when I had to move out. You have to mentally move out of the space that you've been in with this porn habit, with your toxins. You have to get out of the physical and mental space of the toxins. And that can take big decisions. And those decisions can make you feel guilty because they have a ripple effect of other people. But they're worth it. That's what I want to tell you about that present guilt of what you have to do. I had to have my children throw out every single belonging. I had to leave them. I left them for a couple weeks. Then later on, I had to leave them again for a month. And that had ripple effects in a way that I can't even tell you yet because it's so painful. I'll tell you that one eventually. But that one still, that wound is so fresh, how it affected some of my kids, that's like, I've told you before that there's complex PTSD of little paper cuts over time, that you can bleed out from a million little paper cuts over time if you experience complex PTSD. Then sometimes there's a big wound that bleeds out more, and that can impact you even more. I had one of those experiences with one of my children where it was a big slice, and that baby's still fresh. I haven't healed that all, so I am not able to share that one with you with one of my precious children. I am going to share something that's still fresh and open with you in a minute when we get to grief, because I'm not sure how long that wound's going to have to take to close. But your actions have a ripple effect and they will impact people around you. But in the end, as you make it through the difficulty, in the end, it's going to be worth it, because when you flash forward to your 90th birthday, at least for me, what I want is that on my 90th birthday, I'm looking back thinking I didn't leave one thing left to do here. I took all the difficult moments and turned them into opportunities to grow and to be the best version of myself. When I felt nervous and when I felt afraid, I had courage. When I felt fear, I mustered up the courage, even though it wasn't easy for me. That's what I want for you in this journey. You will have to make changes, and not all the people in your life are going to like it. And that's going to lead to the grief piece in a minute, because there might be grief for you to deal with, but you can handle it just like I can handle it. It's like a muscle. You get better at it the more you practice. And the more you practice, your emotional intelligence or maturity grows. You have to have these opportunities and you have to take them to have the growth. If you don't take them, you don't grow. That is the essence of this. But you might feel guilty in the short run because you're like, it doesn't feel like I should do this right now. A lot of people I work with, they'll tell their partners about their struggle and their partners will leave. But if your partner has to leave and get some space for a little while, that's understandable. That is part of the process. That might make you feel guilty, but you still have to know in your heart, you have to have gratitude for the strength that you had to break the madness of the cycle. Because once you break it, then the healing can begin. The healing can never begin unless everybody starts to acknowledge what's actually happening around them. And going back to my crazy mycotoxin poisoning story, that happened. I told the hubs, I'm out, man. That house is killing me. And then I got affordable tests to test it, which came back crazy toxic. Then I invested in the $5,000 test. It was more than that, I think. Obviously I didn't want to invest in it because I didn't totally believe myself yet. And he didn't believe me at all. So now I have to believe myself over, working with him as a team. And I did it. I hired that company and it came back toxic. Everybody moved in to the little townhouse that I got with me. And that only took like a week. But that's a long week of sleeping on an air mattress by myself, wondering if I'm doing the right thing. With my family still over there, I was nervous about my family being in the toxic place. But you can see what I mean there. So that's guilt of the present. When you have to make difficult decisions and show up in a new way, it's going to feel difficult for you. You're going to feel guilty because you are likely going to hurt some people or feel like you're hurting them accidentally because of your new choices, or there's going to be conflict or friction in your relationship. It's actually a good thing because without that conflict, there can't be the growth. And we don't want you to feel shame. Shame is I'm a bad person. I was feeling shame for a long time because I was so sick, and I'm like, it's got to be what I eat and what I drink. That's all I could think. Because every time I'd eat anything, I'd blow up like a balloon, which I now know is just a histamine response and a mast cell activation. I was feeling shameful for having a physiological response to having toxins in you, which I did not do on purpose. Just like you. You're not putting those toxins in your brain on purpose from porn. I'm calling it toxic. You're not putting that in your brain on purpose. Now it is a dependency. So now you have to figure out how to break this dopamine dependency. And that's when you shift shame to guilt and you're like, dang, I'm going to do what I got to do. I'm going to survive. And then I'm going to thrive. And I always, when something comes at me, I've trained myself. I'm going to make some lemonade out of these lemons. And you know how you do that? You add a little sugar. You got to add a little sweetness to it. You've got to just embrace it. It is life. It's going to happen to all of us in one way or the other. So when you take the crap show that showed up in your life and you can interact with it in a positive way, for the most part, there are some dark moments there for me, mostly crying in the bath. But when you approach it with, okay, how can I make lemonade out of this? How can I thrive through this survival, time in my life? When you do that, the sugar is the peace and the calm that you try to add to it. Like, I am going to do this and I am going to thrive. And like I already told you, we had to buy a whole nother house, basically depleting every cent that I had. We're down to the least amount of money I've had in decades. And I just had to stay in faith that it was going to work out. And we now currently rent that house to a wonderful family who's going to be in it. And it's a really awesome place of healing. And they're in a position that they need healing. And it's turning out already really wonderful. So you have to stay in faith. There's pragmatic faith. It's not toxic faith or toxic optimism, as it's called in the business. Toxic optimism is when you think everything's going to be fine no matter what you do. I'm a pragmatic optimist, not a pragmatic octopus. A pragmatic optimist, which means I know it's going to be fine, but I'm going to work my booty off, rest and act. I'm going to do that until I make it work out. And I'm going to make some lemonade out of these here lemons. I'm not going to let them sit there and rot. I'm going to put some sugar on it. I'm going to make some lemonade. And at the end of the day, I'm going to thrive. And there's still a lot of healing to be done. I wish it was as easy as snapping my fingers, but there's still healing to be done. Okay, so shame is I'm a bad person. We convert it into I've got a thing going on that I don't like, and I'm going to put some sugar on it. I'm going to take those lemons and I'm going to make it into lemonade. That's how you can use present guilt. Now there's guilt of the past. And like I've told you, there's two different types of guilt from the past. Number one is things that you've done. Let's stay there for a minute. Feeling guilty about the past basically ensures that your future becomes like your past. Because if you stay in the space of the past, guess what happens? You kind of puddle jump over the present. And the future becomes all those negative feelings inside because of the things you've done in the past. Now, here's the solution. And of course, I'm going to talk about it in your brain hack strategies for the day. But here's part of the solution: staying present. Anytime your mind goes to the past of things that you've done in the past that you feel guilty for, and every single one of us has this. You are not alone in this. Every person has guilt. Some people's guilt, most people's guilt, can be so far buried into their subconscious, they're not even aware that the guilt is there. I spend time in quiet, in meditation each morning, trying to see what I feel guilty about and then honoring it in a positive way. Telling myself, you don't have to feel guilty about that, sister. And this is how, this is the technique, is that think about that person from the past who did whatever thing that they did. This is you, the younger version of yourself. So it can be even you from last week. If you're doing the work to continue to move forward, to become more emotionally intelligent and mature, if you're doing the work to evolve and to reach self-actualization of that best authentic version of yourself, then the you of last week is a more immature version. The you of yesterday, if you're continuing to take every opportunity that comes to you to respond in a new way, to grow and to be an emotionally healthier person, to be a nicer person who doesn't judge, who doesn't feel guilty, who doesn't go to shame, who doesn't have to act out to self-soothe. If you're trying, then you are always becoming a better version of yourself. So you can have empathy for that younger version of yourself, even if it was yesterday. And clearly, the more time that passes between the current version of yourself and that past version of yourself, it can be easier to not completely relate with that version. So if you think of the you from 10 years ago and that you did something you don't like, that's not current you. That's younger you who had less tools, who had less strategies, who was more emotionally immature. So you can feel empathy for him and say, that fella was doing his best with what he had. And that helps you to build empathy not only for yourself, the past version, for the current version who's also doing the best that you can. But here's the tricky part. You have to be doing the best that you can. You have to be showing up and taking those opportunities. Then the shame becomes guilt. The guilt goes down. And you can act in a way of making lemonade. That's why we're talking about it here today. And that gap of that you from 10 years ago, you can start to see that gap getting bigger and bigger because you can start feeling yourself growing. My husband and I took a walk the other night with our dog, Chewbacca, and I don't know, we were just having this conversation about neighbors who just moved in, and they stopped by on Halloween, and you could tell they were like eager to befriend us. And we were joking that how crazy it would be if we were able to meet ourselves from 10 years ago. If we were able to, go to dinner with the Trish and Cosmos of 10 years ago, what that would be like sitting at dinner with ourselves, our younger selves. It would be crazy because I know, first of all, one thing, we both talked twice as much as we talk right now. Our brains were on much more fire than they are now. I can see our brains too because we've been training our brains all along. Since we moved down here, I left my university position, bought my own EEG, my own brain training systems, brain mapping systems. So I have been looking at my brain for 10 years. And this is what I know. Within 10 years ago when I moved down here, my brain grew up a lot in those first couple years. And then I've been maintaining the healthier, emotionally healthier brain. That can happen for you too. That's a beautiful thing. It's like, yes, you're always getting better, but right now we're talking about a porn brain rewire recovery journey. If you take the journey, your brain will improve leaps and bounds, like mine did. And then you will spend the rest of your life maintaining it and leveling up a little. But this journey can be when you level up a lot. And I can see that in the two of our brains. When we moved down here, we very intentionally did a lot of things to grow and to change. When we moved down here, we said we were going to do those things. We committed to it and we did them. And it was difficult for those first couple of years, but out of it, a coal under pressure becomes a diamond. And at least our brains, our lives are coming online too, but at least our brains, they were coal under pressure, and then they became more diamond like, and it's been amazing ever since. But it's funny to think, if we went to dinner with ourselves from 10 years ago, what that experience would be like. And I would want to have empathy for those versions of ourselves, which leads us to, that's past guilt of the things that you do. Now, when you judge other people, stay with me on this one. All judgment, if you judge a person, all judgment is based on a past opinion. So it's difficult because when there's people in your life and somebody comes over, you judge them based upon what you know about them to be quote unquote true. But judgment holds other people in guilt. So, like, for example, my precious daughter, Saoirse, who will probably be mad if she knows I've spoken about this. We're coming off of Halloween, and she's so good when it comes to eating healthy and making good choices. So I go in her room today. There's like 10,000 candy wrappers in her garbage can. And I texted her. Actually, it said, dude. I was going to say, dear child, but it didn't. It said, dude, do not eat one more piece of candy. It is time to focus on being the healthy version of yourself. And she typically anchors into that. And she's been kind of low grade sick for a couple of weeks. She's just in her room eating all this candy, which is just not acceptable. But so I actually made the judgment based upon what I thought was, good choice, Saoirse, where she's actually in her room making bad choices right now, because I would have locked that candy down. Every Halloween, there's kind of a running joke. The kids all go Halloween, trick or treating, and then in the past, they go to school the next day. They would have all their fun with their candy. Who wants their kids having pounds of candy? I would take all the candy. We would donate most of it, and we'd keep a little bit of it. But she's 13 now. She tells me she's not going to really eat that candy, but she's definitely been eating a lot of it. So judgment can go one way or the other. But now I don't want to have a negative judgment of her moving forward because of this experience. So now if I always have this candy experience when I judge how she eats, then what ends up happening is you say judgy things, you think different about people. And obviously a candy example is a really low-key example. You have judgments of people. So here's the exercise for this one, and then let's move on to grief, because this is becoming a long episode. When it comes to judgment of other people, this is what I've learned. Question every single thing you think when it comes to judgment, because judgment is usually based on inherited thought. Those are your ideas that are not even your ideas. They're what you've been taught to think. So they become reactionary instead of responsive. So what I've taught myself is every judgment that I make, I try to hold off on. And you might have heard me say this before, 2023 is the year of not judging. And I've been doing a pretty good job at it. Don't get me wrong, not perfect again. But if a judgment comes in, I try to let it go out and interact with every single person out of love. Because we all are going through it. The human condition, it's not for the faint of heart. And I'm not going to judge people as they're moving through this experience. I try never to do that. If it does show up, I try to adios it, again, by honoring my feelings so that I'm not pretending I don't feel it. I feel what I felt, and I try to let it go and get back to just loving people. And that's what I encourage you to do too. Okay, let's move on to number 2, grief, so that it doesn't become an hour and a half episode. Grief's a tricky one, especially at holiday time. So there's grief of the loss of a person who has passed, who's gone. And if you are grieving the loss of a parent or of a partner or somebody in your life, there's an exercise that you can do to let that grief pass through you. I encourage you to write that person a letter. Tell them everything you always wanted to tell them. Tell them how much you love them. Tell them how much they hurt you. Do whatever you need to do to get all of your feelings out. And half the reason I wanted to make this podcast episode is because all my friends are coming here for Thanksgiving and I have a toast prepared. I'm not usually a toaster. I'm not the one who stands up and toasts. I know it's ironic because I like to make these videos and help the world. I do not like making a toast in front of a room of people. I usually write everybody a card. So this year I've got a toast plan. Because of this crazy year, my friends let me live at their house for a month. They have supported us in ways that you couldn't believe. My children have been amazing through this whole journey, and I plan to toast each and every one of them. My friends, my one friend is a heating and cooling guy. He has gone out of his way to make this house the cleanest air in the world, and the new house that we bought the cleanest air in the world. If you want to taste the cleanest air in the world, you need to come to my house, and it's because of him, and he's coming to dinner too, and I'm so excited. And they're all gonna die that 10,000 deaths because I'm gonna share my emotions with them out loud. And you know how it is. A lot of people can't hear those emotions. It's going to be difficult for me to share. It's going to be even more difficult for them to hear. I'm going to tell the hubs how much it means that he was able to show up for me and stand by me during this journey. I'm going to tell the kids, Seamus is going to die. That kid can't hear an emotion. He's going to die. That's why I'm not telling anybody except for you, because it's going to be amazing. And I'll have to let you know how it went. But grief will show up too. Now, ambiguous grief is there's a loss of somebody in your life who's still alive. So sometimes it's they're still alive and you don't know where they are. Sometimes it's they're still alive and they don't want to be part of your life. Now, I've told you I have 5.5 beautiful children. I have not seen, this is where the waterworks come, first of all, just to get ready for it. I have not seen one of my kids in almost 2 years, which obviously is very difficult for me. And the reason that I wanted to share it is because every day I do get myself into a place to honor that decision. And she's around the block, thank God. But she said she wants to be able to, process her life. And she's got some stuff going on, process her life and not have to deal with us as her parents as she does it. And she actually hadn't talked to my kids in 1.5 years, the other kids, and she started to talk to them. So I think the tide might be turning. But so, as I talk about all the fun I'm going to have with my friends and all the gratitude, there will be grief in the background. And hopefully I can move through this part so we can get to the next part. But there will be grief running in the background. So ambiguous grief, which I have learned to loathe that term because there's nothing ambiguous about it. Ambiguous means you're not sure, there's unsurety around it. Because when someone passes, you can move through the grieving process knowing that that person was there and now they are not, and you are sad for the loss of that person. In ambiguous grief, it's more complicated. It should be called complicated grief, not ambiguous, because there's nothing ambiguous about it. The complicated piece is you're not sure when the situation's going to resolve. And going back to guilt, I had such guilt for so long because I'm like, what the hell did I do to deserve this? Like, felt like I was being punished. All the first initial reactions a person has. But now I realize she's her mother's daughter, right? She's literally me, just on steroids. So that has been able to put me in a place of good for her, man. Like doing it now and what I mean by doing it is establishing her independence and figuring out who she is without that being a reflection of who I am and what I have going on. It's actually a massive strength. That my journey took me 20 years because I wasn't able to do that. I did it very softly while figuring out the dynamics, within my family of origin and having to figure out those dynamics and the push and pull of them, and then on the side figure out who I am. Now, this beautiful woman is saying, I've got to go do that without all of the family of origin. And it's not like we have negative things going on. Actually, when it started, it was before this whole toxin thing. And now I'm like, she's very much an empath. She probably knows, she thinks that we're toxic, but we literally are toxic, but on a different level, on a physical level, which has kind of cracked me up in the background of this. But it's actually a massive strength going. I'm going to go figure out who I am, who myself is. And this is part of what I want you to know about this ambiguous grief piece. If you're in a position like I am, and the reason I'm mentioning it is because I know a lot of the people that I work with, they are in the same position, whether it's absolute physical, non-physical contact, or if there's just strain in their relationships with their kiddos or with their parents. It's the most difficult relationship to navigate. That's why my one son says, "Ma, you got 5 kids. One of them's gonna hate you." I'm like, "Thank you, Declan." And then, another one of my kids is like, "She's just doing what you did." And, I am very proud of her for that. But here's the point, here's what I want to get you to, is that in the midst of all of that, guess what I've learned? And it's amazing. What I've learned is to unconditionally love people, especially her. What I've learned is I'm capable of it and I have it inside of me. So the cool piece is you can never unconditionally love somebody until there's no way to put conditions on it. And so think about that one. Unconditional love. You love somebody even though there's literally no way there can be conditions upon it. And in this case, it was forced upon me. And I really think it's one of the biggest growth opportunities that I've had. And it took me about a year to get to the other side of feeling very painful. I'm sure it contributed to me being sick also with this whole toxic crap, because that was very difficult and was happening simultaneously. But to get to the other side of that and go, you know what a gift. I have now learned how to love somebody unconditionally. And you don't know it until you're in a position, especially as a parent. You might always put conditions on your kids on accident, like, don't eat candy, like I already talked about with Saoirse. Keep your room clean, show up for the holidays, everybody's coming. But I don't make everybody come. I've learned a lot. I've changed probably 50 to 70% of my parenting based upon this experience with my precious child, because I have learned there doesn't need to be conditions. And here's another thing that I've learned: space can't break that love. Ambiguous or not, just because I haven't physically seen her, that love is there. I feel it. I know it. I know it goes from me to her, and I know it goes from her to me. So that's a pretty cool thing too. So moving towards gratitude, when grief sets in and I feel bad and I feel the loss of that, I sit quietly and try to get to the place where I can feel the love going to her. And I can feel the love coming from her. And another thing I realized is her journey isn't because of anything I have going on. So initially I felt bad because I'm like, dang, what am I doing to make this happen? The reality is I wasn't doing anything. It's not about me. And if you're a parent and you have young adult children, you will realize what they do isn't always about you. You're a secondhand, you're a supporting actor in their journey. And as they grow older, you actually take, the back seat and then the third back seat in their life, as it should be. And, so it's kind of cool to be able to, have that love and feel that love, even though there's, I know I won't see her and there's no requirements, but hopefully, once all that learning is done, then we can come back together and be in the same space, knowing that that space isn't the thing that connects us. Okay, so enough on grief, but if you're feeling that way, feel it. Get into the bathtub and cry every night for 6 months like I did. Don't pretend you don't feel it. When you pretend you don't feel a thing, you're not honoring that feeling. You have to honor your feelings for you to work through them. And if you don't honor your feelings, they jam up your brain. They create neurorigidity. Your brain locks up. And when it locks up, guess what it needs? Self-soothing and self-stimulation. And we're here talking about a porn brain rewire recovery. So if you have a contentious relationship with someone in your life Who doesn't? Am I right? And thankfully, I don't have a lot of them. But if you have conflict that's hanging in your background, here's what I want you to do. Think of the biggest conflict you have in your life with another person. And I want you to figure out how you can put some sugar on it and make lemonade out of it. Because I also want you to realize this. She lives with my bonus son. I could show up there anytime I wanted. I could force the hand. I could have the whole time. Almost 2 years. I haven't. I've never shown up. Because I'm honoring her process. I'm honoring her needs. And I'm foregoing my own needs. So I'm saying, okay, I'm going to learn to not need to be by you so that I can honor your needs. And when you're done figuring yourself out, I'll be here for you. Unconditional love. And when you roll back up, there's going to be zero guilt. There's going to be zero shame. There's going to be no pain. There's going to be celebration. And I've always been proud of her. I've never been mad at all, not even for a second, because I'm honoring her journey and recognizing this isn't about me. Okay, moving on to gratitude. So we know that gratitude is proven by neuroscience to create more neuroplasticity in your brain, to move your brain into a calm and focused and peaceful mode. That is what we're talking about here. So when you get into gratitude, you can anchor in, it's putting your brain pattern in that healthy, optimal EEG, electrical energy pattern. So it's putting you into calm, focus, and peace. And from there, it'll create what I call a nervous system sync. Your breathing will slow. You'll come out of sympathetic dominance and you'll get into parasympathetic, coming out of fight or flight, getting into rest and digest. Your system will slow down. You will be present. You'll no longer be stuck in the past, and you'll no longer be frog leaping into the future of pain from the past. You'll anchor into the present and go, this is amazing. This is my life. But again, you've got to be doing the work to have an amazing life. And every person can do it, no matter how painful the past has been, and no matter the conflicts you have going on in the present. That's my point of this podcast. This can be done. You can do it. You need the tools and the techniques and the support. If you don't know how to do it yourself, you get into a program. That's why I made the 90-day program, to teach you all of these strategies to move through recovery. I use these strategies on a daily basis, on a minute-by-minute basis, for real. So when you get into gratitude, the gratitude is, wow, this has been the most insane year, but I have a brand new house. And of course, my husband, took the opportunity to reconfigure it into the way that we wanted. And on that same walk, he said, I say we live in our house for a long time because it's amazing. And out of all that, my one son gave me a necklace for Christmas last year, and it's like, I forget exactly what it says. It was a locket and had our picture in it. It's so sweet. But it says something like, through all things are good with family. And that's the love that's come out of all of it. Like, thinking about all of it. My bonus son was over yesterday, and he's great. And he's loving living with his sister, which is so cool. Like, they're having such a great time. And staying in that place of gratitude, being grateful that he's been able to be there for her and that they're having such a great time. Back when I was in grad school, I lived with my brother for a year. It was so cool. We had the best time, and he and I still have a nice relationship. Gratitude. Showing up with gratitude for all the lemonade that's come out of the lemons and the lemonade that's still to come. And being grateful for the people in my life who have unconditional love for me. No matter the crazy stuff I've had going on, my friends have shown up for me. And I thought about them preparing for the toast. They don't know about that. When we moved here 10 years ago, they were new friends. And now it's 10 years later, they're old friends. How cool is that, right? And all the stuff we've been through, good and bad, over the last 10 years. Delusional thinking. And, we've gotten in arguments. We've resolved them. Totally amazing. And that being able to stay in that place of gratitude for our physical stuff, for our emotional stuff, for the unconditional love that we get the opportunity to be able to have. Okay, so as we move towards wrapping up, here's your brain hack strategy for the day. I want you to think about what you feel guilty about. And if it's anything in the past, get to that place of empathy. Get to the place where you you remember those people were doing the best that they could with the resources that they had, with the emotional intelligence or maturity that they had at that point, even if that person is you, and even if it was last week. Empathy will see you through. It's part of the sugar that you put on the lemons to make lemonade. If it's guilt of the present, do what you need to do to change your actions so you don't be taken down by shame and you move up towards self-actualization. Show up. Show up for this journey, even when it gets hard. Have courage in the face of fear. Be able to do what you need to do to get healthy so then you can go back to being the best version with your family, with your partner, with your children, with your friends. Sometimes you got to go into the woods to take care of your business to come back and be healthy. And that's okay. That's part of life. That's learning to do that is part of emotional intelligence. Then grief. If you feel the loss of anybody, take time to process that loss. Don't pretend it's not happening. Don't try to control it. Relinquish the control. And I know how difficult it is, which is why I wanted to tell you that story of what's going on with me. Because usually I like to tell you things once I'm moving towards resolution. But that one's a difficult one, and I know how many people are in that place. So on Thanksgiving, get into a place of gratitude for your loved one, for the journey that they're going through. They're doing what I'm suggesting you do. They're off in the woods figuring themselves out. Honor that and love them anyway. And even if you have people in your life who struggle with addictions and they're making choices you don't want them to make, that's difficult. I was in that place for a little while, not knowing if your people are safe or if the choices that they're making are going to hurt them. But letting them make their mistakes so they can grow, not emotionally carrying them, recognizing they have to go through that to have their own growth. You can't do it for them. It's so difficult to sit on the sidelines and watch other people that you love go through painful experiences. But, again, through the fire, they're forged. So being there for them in a way that you'll show up when they want you to, but you're not running around the block to show up when they don't. But influencing the situation from far away, which I have done, I will tell you. And I'm very proud of myself for not swooping in and having to try to control it, but to be able to use healthy influence from far away to shift things in a positive direction, which I keep trying to do. We'll have to talk about that one a different day. Influence versus control. And getting into a place of gratitude. Freeform it. Write all the things that you're grateful for. Down to your home if you're grateful for it, your car, your dog, your moments outside, the moon. You know how I love a good moon. The moon has been so beautiful lately. My daughter riding horses, I just beam looking at her that she's doing her passion. In the dumb things that your people do, in the laughter, in the, if you drop a glass, in the broken glasses of the day. It's what shapes your life, the way you respond to it. Be grateful for all the madness because it is the human condition. And if you can stay in gratitude, you're going to grow with that emotional intelligence and you're going to have a lot more fun than if you didn't. All right. If you're inspired, please go over to drtrishleigh.com, 90-day program. If you're looking for the tools to embark on this journey, we're having a Black Friday sale, which Trish10 is the coupon code to get $100 off. I want to commit to helping you through this journey. So $100 off when you go to drtrishleigh.com. 90-day program. It's under Porn Rewire digital programs. If you put coupon code Trish10 in, it'll take $100 off for you because I would love to help you out. If you're inspired to donate, pornbrainprevention.org. It's a nonprofit organization. It's completely tax deductible. You make your donation. I will match it because that's where we're at. This mission's important to me. And I wish you all a happy Thanksgiving. If you're not celebrating Thanksgiving, I wish you every day of gratitude and love and processing grief and letting go of guilt and showing up as the best version of yourself because that's all we can do here and try to have some fun while we're doing it. So happy Thanksgiving. And as always, control your brain or it'll control you.